Good morning, everyone. We're again on the Long Island Support Israel Zoom Live. My name is Dagan, and today, as always, we're going to go over the updates from the last week. But more important than that, today we have a very special guest, Liat Cohen Raviv. Liat, she's not only my mentor when I was in Israel, but she also lives in the northwest town in Israel called Metula, obviously being displayed in the past 6 months. And I think that above all, Liat probably will be the first that will address any American audience talking about the North. I can bet in all of the news media that you watch, the North or the war in the North is something that is not even considered, not even discussed. But there is almost 70,000 Israelis that are being displaced. Children that are getting hurt by that. Businesses that are getting close, basically an entire area in Israel that is becoming the new buffer zone in the war against Hezbollah. And this is where I grew up, this is where my home is. It was very important for me that Liat will be with us today and share with us insights about what's happening in the north of Israel. So as I say, Liat, she's a North resident. She's a mother of 2 daughters that are now in reserve. One of them literally in Jerusalem every day. Remind all of us this is the Ramadan, very intense time. She was the CEO of an international leadership organization, worked a lot with Jewish communities all over, and she's an expert in building through crisis and development. Those days, she worked with communities all over Israel, helping them to see the future in this unbelievable crisis that we're having. And in a lot of ways, she's the voice of the North. And I'm very happy that she's with us today. Liat will talk about 3 main things. Give us a background of the current situation in the North. Give us, again, some explanation about what it is like to be displaced for the past 6 months, and will help us to look forward and think together how this North can look like, hopefully in the near future. So as always, before we pass the microphone to Liat, we'll go over the updates from the last week. So we're in March 28, 2024, the 174 days of the Iron Swords War, getting very close to the mark of the 6 months. And it's important for me to say that we published it all over Long Island on April 7th. We're going to have a big event to mark the 6th month of the Iron Swords War that nobody thought will be in the situation in the Mid-Island SJJCC. So please join us. This day, we still have 134 hostages. 36 of them we know that are not with us anymore. The last is Uriel Baruch, that we realized only this week that he died in captivity, was murdered in captivity. We still have 126,000 Israelis that are being displaced, and we talk about it a lot. The total number of civilians and soldiers that died since October 7th is 1,484, addition of 5 in the past week. The last one of them is Zahar Bshara, is a Druze from Kenya that died in the missile attack yesterday on my city, Kiryat Shmona. 30 missiles that hurt the paper factory we used to work, and unfortunately died, just to show all of us that the missile does not distinguish between Jew, Druze, or Muslim. They kill anyone in the way. And wounded soldiers is almost 6,000. We talked about it a lot in the past few weeks. We know that in Gaza, the IDF eliminated more than 13,000 terrorists. Again, going back to all the numbers that you were everywhere. So out of them, 13 to 14,000 terrorists that the IDF destroyed. Now we'll go over the front just like we do every week. We're going to start with Gaza. So the pressure that the IDF is creating in everywhere besides Rafah for that point is continuing. The special operation, the Shifa hospital and other hospitals in Gaza continuing. We know that we have very important intelligence from those places, and we continue to find tunnels and a lot of weapons. Basically, as we talked before, the IDF in the 3rd phase of this war, conducting special operation based on intelligence in order to target only the terrorists in the Gaza area, especially in Khan Yunis, in Shifa, and in the villages in the center of Gaza. And in the meantime, we are building the buffer zone that we talked about and the corridor of Netzarim to divide the Gaza Strip from the Gaza area from the north to the south. But I will say that above all of that, the most important thing that happened that's connected to Gaza in the past week was the testimony of Amit Susana. Amit was taking hostages on October 7th. She was in captivity for 55 days. And for the first time that a woman that went in captivity came out and speak, she shared our sexual abuse that she suffered in captivity. She did it for the New York Times. So if you haven't saw it, please look it up. This is one of the things that unfortunately we need now to remind everyone what's happening to those hostages. And when we look at the decision made by the UN for an immediate ceasefire, putting the hostages not included, just remember that Amit, she was very brave, but she's only one example from what they experienced. And we'll give a short paragraph of what she said, just so we'll have it in mind. In Amit's words, he came to me, pushed his weapon toward my forehead and hit me. He dragged me into the children's room, a room full of posters of children, and then pointed a gun at me and forced me to perform a sexual act on him. Again, just try to imagine. It will be your sisters, daughters, granddaughters. So this is Amit, and again, unfortunately, it wasn't what was one of the most important things that happened in the past week. One last thing about Gaza, there's a possible hostages deal that's on the table. The best that we know as Israelis that our government approved the deal, was very, very flexible. And the other side, in Hamas and Sinwar, didn't accept it. I will bet that once they look what happened around the world and the world is going against Israel, they feel stronger. And they don't really care about what's happening to the people in Gaza, the famine or the starvation. And as I said, every week, the ball is in their court. They're walking over tomorrow morning if they will just surrender and bring back our hostages. Until they won't do it, I don't think Israel has any other choice than continue what we do, go to Rafah, unfortunate as it may be. Going to the West Bank, I was meaning to say that it's been relatively quiet, although the IDF is continue to conduct very special and aggressive operation. But only this morning, we had a shooting attack in the West Bank. We have 3 minor wounded, 3 Israelis, and we're still pursuing the terrorists. Just again, to have in mind, the terrorist does not distinguish. 2 of them were peace activists coming to work for the Palestinians and was hit by these terrorists. So this was just this morning. Other than that, again, relatively to what could have happened, the West Bank is pretty quiet, considering the fact that it's Ramadan and everything in between. If we talk a minute about Jerusalem and going to Temple Mountain, again, relatively quiet at that moment. The third front that we have is Lebanon. I will just say before we pass the ball to Liat that we'll know to explain much more about the north. As we said always, things can escalate very quickly in the north. And just like we saw yesterday with the biggest rocket launching on Kiryat Shmona, 30 missiles that hit in a lot of places. And again, just remember, the north is much bigger area than the others. Hezbollah are not Hamas. Their abilities they are stronger in so many ways. And this is what we're going to talk today. So I'm going to leave the north to Liat. Liat, I'm going to pass the ball to you. And thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for hosting me. It's a privilege and an honor. Wait, I'm trying to. There you go. Now you guys can see me. So again, a privilege and an honor. And I think I'm going to go on those webinars like from now on, because this has been more productive than most of our newscasts, Dagan. So kudos to you. So I want to start by saying that, yes, I'm going to speak about the north of Israel, which is the topic of this webinar, but I'm going to start by saying that the hostage situation in Israel is the most important and most critical thing that the Israeli society is handling these days. And I would say, of course, it's very it's very straightforward in terms of the crisis, the numbers, the people who are affected by this directly, the needs of the families to get answers, and to the rest of the communities to support what they're going through. But then I want to add another layer and say that if this thing is not going to be resolved, we're going to have a bigger problem, because one of the contracts that Israel has with its citizens, who knows that this is the situation in the Middle East, right? We know that we live in an area who has history, and that we have the majority of our borders are hostile and sometimes aggressive. But there's one more thing that we know, is that the country will always stand behind their citizens. And there's no chance that if something happens to you on this scale, you'll be left alone. And if in this situation it will not be resolved, it will affect the narrative and the knowing of 9 million people who lives here, and I will dare to say to 9 million other Jews outside of Israel, because I think we're all connected. Now I'm going to speak about the North. And in order for me to do so, I will try and share my screen with you. Let's see if I can do that, because I think it's easier to understand once you have some visuals. I think I got it. Now let's do this. Okay. So overall, we have about 200,000 people who were displaced from their homes during this last 6 months. Half of them are from the north border of Israel. Currently, after 5.5 months, who would have thought that it will last so long? We have about 104,000 who are still uprooted. And at this point, I would use uprooted because people were asked to pull out their roots and then literally place them in other places in so many ways and in so many layers of their lives. And therefore, it will be much harder to go back to a routine if that is even a concept anymore. I think we all know, and you probably have discussed in those webinars before, that Israel is going through an earthquake. There's no other way to describe it. And as earthquakes tends to become a reality, we are also experiencing a lot of aftershocks. Some of them are felt, and the majority of them are, I think, hidden and will rise up, and we will feel them more and more as time goes on. And I will address a few of them in terms of the ramifications on the northern community, or a gather of communities in the north of Israel. What happened to 9 million people who lives here, and I think in many cases to a lot of people like you, paradigms and statements and principles and deep understandings were just evaporated in a day. On October 7 and 12 afternoon, and maybe after Shabbat ended, for the rest of the people who were less connected during Shabbat, which is not a lot, because a lot of religious people also got connected once we understood that something big is happening. It was clear that we are asked to embrace more question marks rather than points at the end of our understandings and statements. And at the same time, I will say a lot of the securities that we had were no longer there on October 7. And I think for the first 2 months, it was a feeling that you felt in your body and an understanding that you had in your mind. And now being, removed and far from October 7, you see that, it changes and it becomes more like an individual kind of thing. Where do you place yourself? How do you address it? How much have you taken from that experience to your, to the way you roll in the joint space that we're sharing together. Let me take you to Metula, because as Dagan said, I live in the northest community in Israel. You called it a town. I don't know if it's a town, because there are total of 2,100 people lives in Metula. So happy to be one of the of a few that you get to know in person. But I want to draw your attention to this, to how Metula looks on the map. So this is Metula, it's right here, and you can see that it's one of the, I think, and it's unique in that way, it's the only community in the world that is surrounded 72% of our fence is a hostile border who's aggressive all the time, not just from October 7. And that's the reality. And by saying that, I will also say that you have to be a unique person in order to choose to live in those places. It's not that we woke up on October 7 and we were like, oh my God, I thought there were unicorns on the other side of the fence. We knew that Hezbollah existed and they tried us in the past 3 years, but it has been 17 years of relatively quiet border. On October 7, something interesting to know is although Metula is on the other side of the country than the south, at around 12 noon, 70% of our community members have left Metula. And that happened because 4 years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, a tunnel was discovered 45 meters into Metula by the IDF, and of course was neutralized and bombed, whatever. And a major army guy came to Metula and we had a conversation, and he says, and he then shares with us that there was a plan that the army was following and they were actually waiting for them to cross the border in order to make this legitimate, like to attack them will be legit because you can prove to the international community that they were coming into your territory. And that was a narrative. So everybody woke up that day thinking, oh my God, the scenario that was supposed to be ours actually came to life because we were very skeptical, and that we sat in front of this very high positioned IDF person and we were like, okay, but we're strong, it's not going to happen, it's never going to happen. And then it did, and it changed everything. And a lot of the communities on the border have members who are walking around feeling that they survived 7th of October, even though they were not from the south, who was the major, it was the heart of the earthquake. You can also see in this map that the border is very long. It starts at Rosh Hanikra at the west, and then goes all the way up to Ramat HaGolan, the Golan Heights and the Hermon Mountains at the east. Metula is in between, and the line in yellow is the most attacked one. So 94% of all Hezbollah attacks are in the yellow line since October 7. I've shared that we have about 2,192 members in our community, but Metula was established in 1896. So it's just like a small side note. It's very interesting because borders are usually defined by the geographic situation. If it's a mountain, if it's a river, and Metula is very unique because when they divided the world after World War II, Lebanon was under the French mandate, and then Israel was under the British one, and two generals were sitting down and they were asking, okay, what do we do at this point? There's 27 families over there in this mountain. They speak Hebrew, but then we need to cross the line much higher, much northern than what we planned. And this is how, because of 27 crazy people, we get about 60 more kilometers in 1914, 1918. So this is why it's so strange. And I will share that out of the 27 families who established Metula in 1896, 13 of them are still members in the community. This photo that I'm showing now, I took it from my iPhone. This is how close Hezbollah activists are to the fence in Metula. We can actually scream to one another, and we usually do. And it's usually ahlan, ahlan, everything is okay, everything is okay. And then, sometimes
can you just press about the photo again because we're not seeing it? You can see it.
You see the photo? Really? Rega. Yeah? Now? No? Oh, that's very strange. Oh, so let me describe it because we're not going to manage that now. It's a lot of Hezbollah activists standing behind our fence and carrying Hezbollah flags and just nagging and trying to harass people. What I'm sharing now is actually in Hebrew, but I'm sharing it just as a note, because we have all the communities connected in WhatsApp. You guys probably know that. And then we get a lot of text messages every day. And this specific text message just symbolizes one of the topics. And it basically says, we have a series of events now in Metula. Many bombs are falling at houses. If you plan to came to take your clothes or anything else, please do not do so until further notice. We do not know when this event will end, but currently there's no way to come into the community. I don't know if you guys can imagine getting this kind of text messages where you are at, and I hope that you never do, but this is the reality in the last 5 months. I've made this last night because I thought it was important for you guys to see the numbers. So 173 days, and we have 18 casualties on the north border, not cross country. There's 250 direct missiles who have ruined 250 houses and buildings, and then some. And then there's rockets that are just being launched, sporadically. That's about 3,550. About 150 aircrafts, not with the people on them. It's they have bombs, like they carry bombs entering and passing the borders and just falling down and creating a lot of destruction. And a total of 650 private homes that will need to be renovated from top up after this war will be over. 141 of them are in Metula, of the houses that were destroyed totally. When you think about 24 weeks of this reality, 173 days of uncertainty and ambiguity, I think one of the things to realize that we have tens of thousands of people who've been uprooted, some of them are living in hotels and like small rooms. You should know that when you live in the periphery of Israel, the DNA is nature, is spaces. You are not built to use elevators and so on. It's rarely found, especially in the kibbutzim and moshavim and Metula on the north, on the northern, far border. Private houses is more what you are used to. So this whole thing is out of the norm. Your body is not used to this. And you took families who used to live in 150 meters of a house. My house is 360 meters. And then for the first 2 months, we were in a hotel room, 35 meters, 4 of us, with two daughters, as Dagan mentions, who joined the army. One is in the army, and then the other one was called to reserve duty on October 8th. And then you have to share, and when they come out for the weekend, they come from the weekend from the IDF. All they want to do is just lay down, and they want their parents to serve them food that they know and get comfort from. And that wasn't their reality. Not even talking about the laundry and the food and the whatever. So everything that you've known was taken away from you. I would say that thankfully for us as humans, we get used to things really quickly. We can, cry about it and complain, but at the end of the day, it becomes your new reality. With that said, not all of the evacuees and the people who are uprooted comes from the same DNA. So you have a lot of cities, small cities, which has a different temperament and a volume to them, like Kiryat Shmona and Shlomi, and then the south, it's right to say for Ofakim and Sderot, periphery towns that were created by Olim, who came to first generation, who came to Israel in the 50s, in the 60s, and who have been under attacks in the 70s, 80s, and 90s in the north of Israel. So this evacuation, there's a lot of ways to address it. There's one perspective who said that, that think that it was required and necessary, and it was important that it was done. It is not my perspective. I am now holding the understanding that the damage is bigger than the effectiveness of the evacuation, with taking under consideration the fact, and Dagan just mentioned it, that only yesterday we had 12 rockets falling in Rosh Pina, and I am now in Rosh Pina. I was evacuated to Rosh Pina. So in that sense, I guess it doesn't really matter where you are. And I hope that will not happen, if true, real war will open from the north with Lebanon, it doesn't matter where you are, because all of Israel will be affected, because it's not Hamas. It's not a small terror organization. It has the capacity of an army, of a state, and it's going to be different, and the prices will be, the same. But what I just shared here is that there's a like people became very passive. You have tens of thousands of people who were uprooted and placed in hotels, who just got used to sitting down and not doing anything, because you can't hold your job in most cases, and you had to leave with taking nothing, and the nothing just took over for a lot of the people. Just to share a small anecdote, like about 67, like 80, 67 or 70% of the people who've been uprooted are using health support and conversations and so on, in order to be able to, manage and find the strength with themselves, using help from professionals, which of course we support, and you want to see more of that. Employment, of course, we have communities who have been dispersed all over the country. Kiryat Shmona has 21,000 people in their population. They were scattered in 187 locations in the country. So there's no more community over there. Also, small kibbutzim and small moshavim of like 2,000 people were dispersed in 7-8 locations. So you come to live in the north of Israel, although it's a little bit dangerous because of few reasons. It's the most beautiful part of Israel, and the nature and the water and whatever. The people are amazing, and the communities are united and strong. You want to live in a place where you can, the kids go out in the afternoon and they come back at 7. They might come back alone or with 10 friends who comes to dinner. So it's this kind of way of life, and all of that was gone in a day. And a lot of the leadership was strong enough to hold it together, unfortunately. Relationships were destroyed. Just to share another anecdote, relatively to the same month last year, in the uprooted community, there's a rise up of about 800% of people who separated and actually went through divorce, which is a big number. Parenthood. Well, the Israeli parents were always a little bit light on their children's education, especially when they hit puberty age, in like at the age of 14 to 16, 17. So we wouldn't have won awards on that category on October 6th, and we definitely not winning awards now. It is very hard to educate your children in a hotel or in a reality of nothing is stable and everything is uncertain, and they change their education system sometimes 2-3 times because they move, and the schools are being closed or reopened or navigated to somewhere else. It's very, very difficult, and we see that in so many ways, because this is the ages that now we know, based on researchers, who are going to this is where we're going to see the aftershocks coming forward, because this is the age 9.5 to 29.5, when you are already, like naturally busy with asking yourself, who am I, what am I, and what is my place in the world? And when there's craziness around you, the fact that it is a challenging age anyways becomes even more challenging. And I want to remind us all that these are Corona graduates, and they are very much aware at that age on the political madness that's been going on in Israel in the last 10 years, but I want to say more dramatically in the last 5. And there's a big leadership trust crisis in your parents' home, but then also in your community, and then in your region, and then in your country. These are some of the aftershocks. And I will say, on a more optimistic kind of way, that we are very much aware. And I personally, I remember in a few committees, national level, that are addressing those kind of issue and trying to figure out solutions and support systems moving forward. In terms of data, just to share with you, we have researched teens in the north, and we have 60% of, and we have about 17,000 of the evacuees in the north are teen age. So they are from the age of 12 to 18, or maybe 10 to 18. So we surveyed them, and some of the things, the data that came up was very disturbing. It turns out that half of them were engaged in, drugs, alcohol activity, when the percentage usually is 21. So we are at 54, משהו כזה. 60% of them reported that they feel lonely, which for me was one of the hardest things to be aware of. Loneliness is hard, especially at that age. And a lot of them are, again, are taken care of through, psychologies and support system and so on. And we're talking about 67%. Yeah, I guess this is it. But I want to say something about the future, because this thing, I wish that this thing haven't happened to us, and maybe the peak of it is still ahead of us when you're talking about the north. In either case, this is a crisis that will ask us to find our strength and use this thing as a, as the reasoning for us to get stronger again. I don't have to say that to you, but 3,600 years of the Jewish people, if there's anything that we know how to do best, is to recover after crisis and struggling times. And we're going to do it again, but we're going to do it even much more intense and focused on the north side, on the north border of Israel, because it was the weakest part of the country on October 6th, and it will not stay this way after this thing will be over. We'll be stronger than that.
Wow. First of all, Liat, thank you. I think that in a lot of ways, you show once again the DNA of the Israelis about overcoming and building ourselves from earthquakes or from destruction, maybe.
Yeah.
So thank you for this, and I will say thank you for being the voice of the North. It's not only here in America, even in Israel. The North is an area it's very easy to not pay attention to, especially because the future is uncertain, and none of us knows how it's going to look like. If in Gaza or in the West Bank, when this area, the IDF is operating, the North is on hold for 6 months now. And it's a very challenging place to be in.
I'll say one more sentence, Dagan. I will say that here's a metaphor to how to think and how urgent it is to address the thing, okay? Because the whole of Israel is a big mamad, is a security room for the Jewish people, right? And it's literally a mamad. It's a mamad that will not get approved because it has too many doors. Because you want, the north of Israel is one door, the south is another one. And if the doors are not strong enough, people are coming in, and we cannot afford that. So only for that reason, we need to make sure that the edges of this country are strong, with strong people who understand that this is their national mission.
I agree. And just to finalize, I have one personal request from all of you. A lot of you that are here knows me. This is my home. Just like Long Island is your home. This is the streets, and Kiryat Shmona is my city. I was there in 2006. In Second Lebanon War, when Kiryat Shmona was targeted on 100 missiles a day. Those roads are my roads. Metula. All of my friends and family live on those places. Liat knows me since I'm a teenager. And again, this is a region that nobody speaks about, and it's like it's not a part of the conversation. And my only personal request is please follow up. Try to ask questions about what's happening in the north of Israel. It's an entire region that is in day-to-day war every day. And we need your help in a lot of things that you do for the south. Just remember the people in the north, those 200,000 displaced, and all the unfortunate data that they had shared with us. Think about the numbers, 650 homes that got destroyed. In a small community like Metula, 150?
141.
141 that you need to
And
rebuild.
counting.
And count, exactly. So again, for me, it was a very personal session, but I hope it was meaningful for you as well. Liat, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and again, for everything you do. And let's hope for a quiet weekend. We'll see you all next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.